Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. This is David with Divination Nation, and what I'm going to be doing tonight is something a little special for you guys. This is a type of reading that I have never done before, but I mean, I have done something similar on TikTok, but as you can see, or maybe not, I have the astrology chart for the moment right here. So, we're going to first start off with the current astrology. I also have what I will be using here on this phone, which is the information for Hellenistic astrology. So I'm going to wait for this. Okay, so as you can see, I will be taking your guys' age over here, and I will be associating it with the houses. And all I need is your age and your sign, and I'll be able to give you guys information as far as your profile and also what's going to be happening during this year, what's going to be happening during the last year, and also what's going to be happening here in the future year from your birth dates. And of course, on this phone here, I have the astrology chart as well. I mean, I don't know if you guys could see it. Maybe not. Oh, whoops. Right here. So I have the astrology chart up right now, but I will be using this one specifically. You know what? I should start using another camera at this point instead of this one here. However, I will be putting Gemini on that phone. And as you can see, I'm using four different types of devices. And oh, look at that. How interesting. We got Thermo Bro right over here. Ha! Well, Thermo Bro, glad that you're here. So we're gonna first start off with the astrology. So for those of you that are watching right now, we currently have Scorpio at 9 degrees. I was meaning to put this video up earlier, and that was back when Libra was the rising sign, and I believe it was at like 27. So, generally, the number 9 has to do with things like, for instance, philanthropy, also has to do with happiness, how that happiness is attained. And if you really think about it from the tarot perspective, you got the Nine of Swords, which she's basically stressed out. The Nine of Wands, essentially, he's sort of stressed out, but he's been through a lot, and you can see it. The Nine of Cups, he's very happy because he made the proper choices. And the Nine of Pentacles, what is the Nine of Pentacles? Eight of Pentacles is working. Nine of Pentacles. Huh. It's an interesting one. I'll have to get back to you guys on that. For sure. Actually, no. Let me check that out. Give me 1 second, guys. Yes.
What are you doing?
I'm on a live currently.
Oh, okay, I'll call you back later.
Okay, sure thing.
Okay.
Well, that was a friend of mine, and she was going through a specific situation, but since she's going to be calling me back later, I can now go ahead and take a look at the Nine of Pentacles. Yes. So I don't even have to look at the Nine of Pentacles. I remember what it's about now. Nine of Pentacles is that girl that's holding the little birdie, if I'm not mistaken, and she's just very confident in herself. It's because she listened to her intuition. That little birdie, that little ibis, I believe it's what it's called, has to do with that specifically and about knowledge and understanding how to use that knowledge. So let me return back to the page here. And so when we look at how the rising sign is progressing. Right now, it's between Scorpio and Taurus. So, for those of you watching this at this time, and for those of you who will tune in, you guys will be trying to find out the truth, but you guys will also be trying to see how that fits into your value system whenever you see this video. The idea generally is that a lot of you are trying to gain the information that are necessary in order to positively put yourself out into the world. Put yourself out in a manner that allows you to be more confident, to be more charismatic, and if so, you came to the right place. A big part of that has to do with the IC in Aquarius right now. Of course, Pluto's in Aquarius right now. Pluto is in the third house. So communication that's powerful for you guys is going to be something that can be learned here on this channel, but can also be learned on Luxury Meet Warriors, my other channel. Both of them are licensed as a business. I do have to get the Easy Biz filing done, but that's going to be done by Thursday. Now, a big portion of this has to do with how people will move, basically. And with Jupiter in the ninth house, people are very much trying to see what they can do to expand on the various different things that they can use in order to help themselves. Gemini and Cancer, right there in the eighth, almost a perfect split. And what's being asked right now in terms of changes and how we commit to those changes and how we make those changes happen, not just for our own good, but also for the good of others, which is the second house, and how people perceive us. There's a lot going on with how we act at home, what we do at home, the actions that are developed at home, how we think about what our belief systems are at home and things like that. Right now we're being illuminated to the greater aspect of society. We're being illuminated to the belief systems of society firstly, but we're also being illuminated to the thought processes that actually have that brought forth. So simply put, people are looking at these things because Chiron in the sixth house in Aries signifies what can we do to prevent ourselves from acting impulsively? Secondly, what can we do to actually get rid of our reactions, per se, and what exactly that means for us? So, what I'm going to be doing here is, as a collective reading, I will be taking the information from the tarot and taking the information that I see here in the chart, and I will be doing basically one card or two cards, whichever ones pop up from the tarot, to explain the energies that we see here. So I'll start off first from the rising sign, and then from there, we'll go ahead and end at the MC, since I feel like that's the ending corridor here tonight. So let's see what is being reflected here between the out or the external world and the internal world, and having to do with the rising sign of Scorpio at this moment. We have it at 11 degrees. So let's see what is in alignment. Okay, so actively, people are trying to reach towards some type of emotional stability, emotional happiness. The Ten of Cups is one of those cards that essentially is trying to ensure that whatever actions we do and whatever information we gain from those actions is something that allows us to align ourselves with the proper ego, because ego isn't bad, it's just how you use it. Also the body health and how we begin. Now, how we begin is also how we end as well. So, very much so, people at this point in time, for those of you watching this video, will be in some way, shape, or form trying to understand what you can do in order to bring that Ten of Cups to you. Ten of Cups is happy life, happy wife, blissful life, I guess you could say. Because if you look at this card specifically, and this is the Pot Tarot, you have a rainbow there. A lot of the times when it comes to rainbows, it's about happiness, but it's also about creating that happiness. You look at, I guess you could say, the lore behind rainbows, and rainbows are supposed to lead to a pot of gold, apparently. Allegedly, I should say. So people are in some way, shape, or form trying to find out information as to how to go about that. Now, when it comes to the moon in second house and in Capricorn, the page of buds, which is basically the page of earth, people at this time will be trying to figure out what exactly is necessary in order to grow that happiness, first of all, but how to move slowly and methodically, and also what they feel they need to do in terms of how to do that. Now, Capricorn is a very structured sign. So the moon being there at this point in time in the second house, which has to deal with worth and value and things associated with Taurus, which right now is where the descendant is at, has a lot to do with how people will perceive the way that they actually go about doing that. Now, the moon is also one of those ones that it's how people feel on the inside. So the moon being in second house and the descendant being in Taurus, it's going to be double that energy. Now, it's also about finances and also possessions. So at this point in time, people are going to be looking at the possessions. They're going to see, what can I do to make the most of what I have right now? And that's actually a good thing. We want that to happen because then that actually causes us to look at things methodically. And when we look at things methodically, what ends up happening is we start to understand, firstly, what we need to do on a daily basis, our actions, our goals, our ambitions, and also the necessary partnerships that are necessary for that to happen. We can go about life on our own, but at some point in time, we're going to need somebody sometime. So that's going to be an important thing for everybody to keep in mind. Now, I want to go ahead and start drawing for Pluto and see what Pluto has to tell us. Okay. So Pluto in Aquarius in the third house currently, which is the house of Gemini specifically. So double air sign energy. The Knight of Pipes, which is the Knight of Swords. There is a necessity for us to be on the lookout for things specifically having to deal with the Three of Buds, which in the tarot is the Three of Pentacles. So how to properly build, or what's the necessity for the communication that's necessary in order to find out what we're trying to build and how we're trying to build. The Page of Bongs is the Page of Cups, specifically having to do with a dream. And just like in the Page of Cups, you have this little fish right here who's jumping out of the bong, and he's jumping back out into the ocean. So if we put these three together like this, we start to see a message. So from the Page of Buds, or the Page of Pipes, what do we need to look out for so that we can build the structure that's necessary and also delegate the responsibility to build our dream? And what do we need to do to send our dream into the collective conscious so that we can actually realize it? And this is actually the Hermetic principle of as within, so without. What is it that's within you that needs to go out and travel out to the collective through action, which is cause and effect, and how we would be able to do that in order to realize our dreams, our goals, our aspirations, things of that nature. Now, do realize that the third house has to do with learning and travel. So, for some of you guys, you might need to travel to other locations to get other points of view, to get other thought processes so that you can actually assimilate that all into a cohesive belief system and understand how to develop that belief system within the home in a way that allows you to express that out into the world. Now, some of you guys with the sun in Aquarius in the fourth house might be influencers. You guys might be readers, like myself, and things of that nature. So it's going to be necessary for you guys to start putting out your content, self-publish, self-produce, things of that nature. All right, so let's see. Mars in the third house in Aquarius. Ooh. That's right. So it's a necessity for you to actively start communicating whatever it is that you want with other people, just simply because you have the Five of Earth. This is the Five of Pentacles. Now, the Pentacles in the normal tarot describes a situation where people are left out in the cold, but more so, it describes a situation where people might just be a little too stubborn to ask for the help that's necessary. Because if you really think about it from the perspective of the people standing outside, there's a church right behind them, and they could easily go in there, but their ego and their heart doesn't allow them to. So when it comes to Mars, make sure that you're taking action to ask for the help that you're looking for, specifically from the greater perspective or the greater collective out there. Because if you don't, well, then what ends up happening is you have no forward movement. And if you have no forward movement, then what ends up happening is you start to feel resentment, more specifically for the people that you wish could have helped you, but you never said anything. So, nothing results from that. Okay, so that's it for Aries, or Mars, I should say. What about the sun? What needs to be reflected about the sun in terms of Aquarius' fourth house? And what needs to be illuminated to the collective? Hope. So when it comes to the illumination and the fourth house, security and things of that nature, hope. When you have hope, there's a lot of different things that end up moving in your favor. They say that an ounce of hope in someone can move mountains. It very much literally is true. So the star is not just asking us, to have hope, but it's also to ignite hope in others. So if you're going to do something online, make sure that it has something to do with illuminating hope for others and hope for the collective, right? The star driving the sun in Aquarius and fourth house has a lot to do with being the ignition point for others, being the fire that stokes the embers or the wood or the fuel of others. And that is going to be very important because having Venus, the North Node, and Mercury inside of Pisces, especially right now with the fourth house, if you start putting out any content, that's going to be very important for you guys. Okay, so is there anything else? I guess so. All right, so some things to avoid. Avoid getting too emotional, right? The King of Cups is one of those cards that essentially describes a businessman, but people can only be businessmen if they have their emotions and their mind in check. And also, don't feel stuck in lack mentality. That's essentially what these two cards in the reverse say. I'm not going to put them out, but that's just advice for you guys there. Okay, moving into Venus. Venus in Pisces, the High Priestess. So essentially, Venus in Pisces is asking you, trust your intuition, understand what it is that you are believing in, but also why is it that that guides your belief system. You also have the Devil in the reverse and Judgment in the reverse. So when it comes to the Devil, essentially don't fall for any temptations. Release yourself from any vices that may actually try to bring you back into a sense of indulgence that you know is not good for you. And I know there's some things that some of you out there might be struggling with. That's what the Judgment in the reverse is for. But your intuition is going to help you point that out. It's also going to help you to understand how best to move forward from that point. And that's actually what your superpower is right now, is the ability to understand what is an indulgence and what is a necessity. Okay, let's see what else. Let's look at the North Node. So North Node in Pisces in the fourth house is asking you nine of nine of Pentacles. Huh. Nine of Pentacles and what else? Seven of Cups. Hmm. So the North Node says there's a lot of different opportunities. There's a lot of different choices out there. Which one is going to make you happy? All right. See how there's a variety here and there's a variety there. Essentially, what's being asked of you is understand what it is that your soul is pulling you towards, and that'll actually help you make the right choice, not just in your emotions, but also in the physical plane as well. Well, that was simple. All right, so now Mercury in the fourth in Pisces. Let's see what Mercury. Let's see what Mercury has to tell us. Hmm. Six of Pentacles in the reverse. Your intuition already knows what to give and what to give to. That much is very simple. And I feel like a lot of you guys will feel that confirmation there. Your reality will reflect that information there. I don't know your specific situations, but what I do know is that your belief systems have already formulated. And what Mercury is basically telling you with the Six of Coins in the reverse is make sure that you don't give to situations that are not good for you, especially with situations that are indulgent and that are good in the moment, but are not good overall. And you already know it, you already feel it, you've already been through it, is what I'm getting from that. Don't give it the attention, right? Because Mercury has to do with the mind, it has to do with logic. Think logically about it and understand what makes you happy and what doesn't. And also, as is said in the description, allow for what doesn't to fall away. All right, so Saturn is in Aries already, and this is in the fifth house. Let's see what Saturn in the fifth house in Aries has to tell us, because this is about restraint, and it's also about not fighting what you know you don't need to fight in terms of the battles. Now, I seen 23 with 00 there on the clock, and with the Five of Wands, you know, one thing that we tend to do is fight battles that we don't need to fight. So Saturn is asking us to have restraint. Being in Aries, which is a fighter, and being in the fifth house. You know, fifth house has to do with love and creativity. It has to do with sex, pleasure, and things of that nature. And Saturn is asking us not to be impulsive, to actually think, to have patience, but also to have perception. Neptune, right there. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to try to delude us, but at the same time, you know, Saturn telling us that we don't need to fight battles that aren't ours to fight, and Neptune telling us that we need to approach things from a new emotional perspective. It tells us that we need to have patience and we have to look at things from a different perspective as opposed to trying to see things from a disillusioned or a fairy tale perspective, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word. Because there's a lot of things that people might actually do on impulse, and it's because they perceive things to be a certain way. And so there is a necessity for us to have patience, but also discernment. And so don't be fooled by the smoke in the mirrors, guys. That's essentially what the Ace of Bongs is telling us, or the Ace of Cups dealing with Neptune in the fifth. Don't be disillusioned by the things that actually make you feel good in the moment. but that don't ever really do anything long term, because that will lead to unhappiness, basically. So let's look at Chiron in the sixth house. Okay, I'll keep. All right, Chiron, thank you. I guess cards are falling out. Hmm. Ace of Pentacles, Knight of Wands in the reverse, King of Cups in the upright. So we mentioned King of Cups in the reading earlier. What is Chiron telling us in the sixth house in Aries? All right, so the Ace of Pentacles, essentially, whatever it is that we're trying to build, and whatever it is that actually has the ability to make us, money in the future, create wealth, abundance, and all of that, has to deal with not being impulsive. So we mentioned that when it came to Saturn in Neptune just recently. And when it comes to the Knight of Wands, the Knight of Wands is one of those types of energies that wants us to be impulsive, that wants us to just do things without even thinking about them later. But when you have the King of Cups, right? What ends up happening is King of Cups is a very emotionally stable man, and that's the reason why he's considered the businessman of the tarot. And when you have the Ace of Pentacles and the King of Cups together like this, that means that in order for you to create that wealth, you have to be emotionally aligned. The only way that you can be emotionally aligned is if you are patient and not impulsive, which I find to be very interesting, that this whole reading is essentially telling one big story. Seek the truth, ingrain it into your values, understand what you know you need to do on the inside in order to build whatever it is that's necessary that's going to make you happy. Understanding how to use your words and how to communicate that to the greater collective in order to realize that into your reality, and how all of that plays a role from your home, from your family life, and from things of that nature. So let's see, the descendant in Taurus. What? Nine of Wands. Very simple. What's being asked of you right now is, don't take various different situations that have made you defensive, that have made you feel like you've been a victim. Don't carry those into this next season. What's being asked is for you to develop your values off of what you believe and what you've created in your home, as opposed to what has ruined you, what has made you feel like you've gone through a struggle. Because anytime you go through struggles, what ends up happening is it's meant for you to take action on those struggles. It's meant for you to build your, I guess you could say, your fame, but it's also to build your charisma that's also going to be expressed out into the world, and to actually seek that validation within yourself as opposed to your collective, your greater reality, etc., etc. Now, one thing that I will say is a lot of people have been through a lot lately. I'm not going to discount that. But if you're just blaming your circumstances for what has happened, what has occurred, what will occur, then the only thing you're doing is that you're outsourcing your accountability and your responsibility for the part you played out to something else. As I've told people, they say, oh, the universe did this, the universe did that. No, the universe didn't do any of that. We made an action. The action has a consequence, cause and effect. And what's being done on the inside is actually a direct reflection of what's being on the outside. That's the Hermetic principle, as within, so without, and as without, so within it be also. So let's see. Uranus. I feel like this is actually the crux, with Uranus being in the second house, in the seventh house, and being in Taurus. We have the ability to understand what it is that we need to do personally in our relationships specifically as well, and how we can actually change that about. 27. 2 plus 7 equals 9. And this is actually what's going to lead us towards our happiness. So let's see what the tarot reflects about Uranus and Taurus, and how we can actually ground ourselves in our values, and how we can ground ourselves in what specifically we know we need to do. So, Four of Wands, but in the reverse. I feel like when it comes to the Four of Wands, we tend to look too much to the finish line, and we tend to look too much to the finish line. But if you don't have an idea of what that finish line is, there's a necessary need for us to rewind. And once we're able to rewind that, we're able to understand how best to move forward from that point and what it is that we're actually celebrating for. Now, you can't celebrate a victory unless you actually know what you're trying to go for, right? Um, that's the Mars in Aquarius, but it's also the Sun in the fourth house right now. Take a look at your belief systems. Take a look at how you act in the home, and what ends up happening is you'll see what clashes with your own personality, but what also clashes with your own personal values. If something clashes against your own personal values, discard it, because it's not going to. It's only going to cause friction, and it's not going to help you develop the proper relationships that you know you need to do in order to realize what it is that you need to realize in terms of your communication and your thought process to make things happen in your life. Now, time to see what Jupiter has to say for us. Jupiter right now is in the eighth house. So these are the changes that you know you're going to need to make, and things that you know you can expand on when it comes to caring for yourself. And these things are you're going to feel because right now that energy is somewhat opposite of the moon. So your intuition is going to point you towards those things. The Nine of Cups. Yeah. Nine of Cups. Okay. And the Ten of Pentacles. Interesting. So what I'm getting from this is you already know your intuition with that High Priestess over there, and having to deal with, if I'm not mistaken, the North Node. Let me see. Rising, the Moon, Pluto, Mars, the Sun, Venus. Oh yeah, Venus in the fourth house in Pisces. So you already know intuitively what you need to do in terms of how to build that personal happiness, but also how to build that Ten of Pentacles energy, which is the abundance, wealth, health, all of that. So having these two together is actually the crux. This is actually what you know you need to do in order to create the changes that are necessary. And it all has to do with caring for the self, the personal changes you need to make in order to realize all of that. So let's see what we get for Leo, and the MC being in Leo. And we're going to go ahead and after that, start doing little mini personal readings. So for the collective, we need to be confident in the relationships that we forge. Obviously, Uranus in Taurus in the seventh house explains that. But in order for us to have that charisma, we need to have a death of or an ego death. And time, this lovers over here on this side is actually a duality. We know we need to make the decision to put things to death. And the only way that we can do that is if we take a look at things from a different perspective. That's actually what's going to help us with our charisma. And the Three of Cups, essentially, this one was reversed. So it's necessary to pay attention to what we need to do, but also how we can forge those relationships with others. How can others help us to achieve our dreams, our goals, our reality? that actually goes right down to the fourth house, which has to do with that the relationships which we forge, understanding which relationships are good for us, which ones are bad, and how we can actually identify that within our lives. And that actually has to do with the high priestess and what we know is good for us and what's not. At the bottom of the deck, we have the Ten of Wands. So a lot of people have been struggling. You guys are going to be dropping that weight soon. Now, look for signs in your reality. Things like 999, things like 99, the numbers 9, right? That's going to be important as well. As you know, Uranus being at 27 degrees is essentially outlining. And also, mm, what else? Yeah, I feel like that's pretty much the message. Let's see. Yeah, Ten of Swords. So essentially, if situations are coming to an end, let them, as mentioned in the description. For whatever doesn't need to follow you into this next stage of life, let it fall away. Don't give it emotion. Don't give it any leniency to stay. If it wants to go, it wants to go. So, with that, that is going to be the reading for today. And for those of you who resonate with this message, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And for those of you who are interested, I can do personal readings right now. I will be using Hellenistic astrology. And for those of you who wish to get tarot, I can go ahead and do a tarot for you guys as well. So I'll be on for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and go get me a snack, probably a little bit of cereal. And I'll just be here chatting for you guys. Maybe giving you guys some updates on what's going on with Divination Nation, what's going on with Tarot and Astrology for All. Let me go get some food, and I'll just be waiting for you guys to go ahead and come in. Alrighty. So I was thinking, since I don't have the information for my my Venmo and various different other payment systems, what I do want to do is I want to go ahead and end it here. And tomorrow, when I do my next live and the descriptions and all of that, I'm going to go ahead and have that information there. So that way you guys have the ability to go ahead and make payments as necessary for these mini readings. And that'll actually be much more of an incentive for you guys to want to get one. So, and then also, I think what I'll do is I'll be doing my readings from my phone specifically because I have a better camera on there. And I'll just use my computer for, you know, the astrology and various things of that nature. I'd be able to turn my camera around, show you guys, etc., etc. So, with that being said, thank you for being here and thank you for your time. It's very, very valuable, as time is the only currency that we don't have the ability to get back. So, with that, guys, take care. You guys have a good night, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao.